Today, I am going to share with you. Well, let me start this over. So, the question was asked, what does it mean to feel fear, but still complete the task that is causing the fear? And also, what, why is it so important that we face our fear? And I found these two questions very interesting. And of course, I do have an answer. Now, I also encourage you to stay until the end of the video because I'm also going to tell you the number one thing, or one of the number one things, let me rephrase that. One of the number one things that keeps us so connected, or that makes us grip tight to fear. Rather, that's a better word. I will go over the number one thing the number one reason, or one of the number one reasons rather, why we grip so tight to fear. So you're gonna want to stay till the end to find that out. My name is Charmaine. I am the Beauty Out of Brokenness coach. My purpose is to help individuals like yourself walk over the bridge of forgiveness onto the path of healing. I do this by providing the skill set and tips on how to remove blockages and barricades that stop you from becoming your best self. So, in saying the word blockages, one of those blockages would be fear. And because I was asked this question, I could have came at this question from any angle because there's a lot of answers that can be given. And of course, mine took me a minute because I am a very deep thinker. Those who have followed me from my other channel know that I think deep. So it takes me a minute to weed out the stuff and narrow it down, which is probably why it took me almost 2 days to come back and answer this question, because I was asked the question 2 days ago. But for me to be able to answer that question, I look at things from a different angle as in the aspect of what is fear really? So we really want to dig in and ask ourselves, what is fear? Because fear can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. But when we actually break fear down, fear is an actual emotion. And I know a lot of you guys are like, ma'am, we already knew that. And that's fine, but I'm going to say it again. Fear is an actual emotion that evokes feelings of panic, feelings of anxiety. Fear evokes thought processes of some people feeling doomed. Some people will begin to feel, there's certain people who, when they go into a fear state, they start to feel like it's all over. There's nothing else I can do. When fear is coupled with a task, it brings along a lot of chaos that pretty much interrupts our nervous system. It causes our blood pressure to rise. It causes some people's breathing starts to change. It also causes some people to do the fight, flight, or freeze. experience. So when we look at fear, we look at this question, we really, because you want to get the full grasp. Everybody can look at fear from a surface level, but when you go deep and look at it from a go to the undercurrent of fear and really dig deep and pull up what fear really means to certain individuals, certain people, then you can understand why it is such a big issue. And the thing is, I know we have all experienced fear. And my thing is, what I would like to know is, how many of you have actually are going through a situation like this where you've been asked to do something and you are just feeling all this fear? Hang with me, because I'm going to give you another bonus tip on how to kind of shift that process of feeling all that stress of, or all that, yeah, well, all the stress of fear. But go ahead and give me a 1 in the comments. Let's see. There we go. So, because again, nobody is going to get off this rock without feeling some form of fear at some point in time in their life. And that is just, I mean, the breaks of it. And as I speak about this, it really hits home for me how deep fear can hit. So those who don't know, I was engaged and my fiance passed away about 7, maybe 8 years ago. After he passed away, I have pretty much been in what we call a seclusion, because of course that was very painful. And I did go through the fear state when he was passing, but I really didn't feel an urge or sense of fear. I felt this urge or sense of fear 3 times in my life. And one of the times was about 4 or 5 years after my fiance passed away. I would say that would be because a college sweetheart who I truly believe is my true and honest soulmate counterpart. Me and him, after decades, because like I said, we were college buddies, but me and him actually, after he went through what he went through, life took him through what it was going to take him through. And then I went through what I went through. We're talking almost a decade and a half of us not seeing each other, not talking to each other. I can honestly say, before I met my fiance, I did look for him, but for whatever the reason, I couldn't find him. And of course, I couldn't understand why. Well, in a way, I did understand, because when he came out of college, of course, he got signed to go play professional football. So I just assumed, well, they keep all their names under wraps. But it was just crazy. After 4 years of my fiance being gone, I want to say within that 4.5 year mark, me and him actually reconnected. We that actually found each other on Facebook, which funny enough, I had tried to look him up on Facebook years before and could was nowhere to be found. But we ended up reconnecting on Facebook, and then we ended up talking, and then of course meeting up every so often. And this was a long distance type of deal. It was a real long distance relationship. Um, but we had so much energy. Anybody, a lot of people, a lot of my friends, and just people that didn't know us in general, when they would see us in a room, they'd be like, the energy between you two is like thick. And they would always say, not in a bad way, in a good way. You can really feel, that there is something there. I always felt that. He told me he felt it. And so from there, we did start talking because we were very good friends. Ended up turning that friendship into a relationship. And it was going, for me, it was going good. Now, there were some things that I didn't like, but I chose to look over. And then one day, I just got this nudge. It was like a nudge in my spirit that just said, you're going to have to let him go. And it was more of a shout because I had been feeling this way, but this particular day, it was more like, okay, I need you to focus and I need you to listen to your inner self. You're going to have to be prepared to let him go. And when I tell you, I realized that what my inner voice was telling me was absolutely right. The fear that literally rushed in after I began to say, you know what? I am going to have to let him go. It was almost catastrophic because I was like, I fought it. When the voice first came, I was like, oh no, I'm not, no, because this is my guy. This is my dude. This, we worked, we waited almost 2.5 decades or a decade and a half for this. What are you talking about? It's not even making sense. So I felt it. I had to get through it in order to be okay with it. And you guys, excuse me, I think something just, a mosquito or something just flew in here and bit me, which is why I am over here scratching like nobody's business. But anyway, I had to get over what I was feeling. And all I can remember thinking was, what am I going to do without him? This was not a part of the plan. I was comfortable with the way things were. I am perfectly fine. And I believe that is a lot of our problems. A lot of us as individuals, we're okay with being limited to certain things. I eventually did end up letting him go. But it also reminds me of another story where my daughter, who is now grown, she's grown now, she lives in Colorado. But when she was going to high school, I believe it was either her senior or junior year, and she was in a fashion class. Her school was one of the first schools to have its own fashion class. So she loves to sew, loves to put things together. And I remember they had an event and she needed to be taken to this event. So I had to take her, and I believe it was 2 or 3 of her other friends, to this particular event for school, where they went and they took and they laid out their little presentation that they had all worked together to put to show to a group of panelists, I believe. And once she got there, I dropped her off. I couldn't stay because I had to get back um, to go take care of some other business because, of course, I, being the president of my choir, had to take care of stuff for the choir. So I told her I'll be back to pick you up. As soon as I got to my destination, I get this text, and based off of the text, I could tell, okay, she is going in total chaos mode. So she sends me a text and she said, "Mom, this woman is now just telling us that we have to put a presentation together." And I said, "Well, yeah, you got to show your," she said, "No, the presentation has nothing to do with the outfit that we created. Um, but it had to do with fashion." And so she was just fear and chaos. That's all all she was seeing at that point was, this is not what she told us we were coming up here for. We were supposed to present our project, get a grade, and see if we can get scholarships. I think it was Skaggs, I think the name, or Skaggs. It's some college. It's a real well known, I think it's Skaggs, fashion college that's in California. I believe they're in Arizona and Atlanta. I do believe yeah, Atlanta. But she was livid, and she was so upset. I could feel, sense her fear. And so what I told her, I had to get on the phone with her and I said, "Jayana, I need you to breathe." And she was like, "But mom, we got to go up." She said, "I only got like 40 to 35 minutes left to come up with something to say, and I wasn't even prepared for this." I said, "Jayana," I said, "I need you to pick 3 points." And I said, "What is the thing?" And she gave me the thing. I said, "So you pick 3 points, hit those 3 points 3 different ways, and move on to the next point." I said, "You know about this stuff." I told her, I said, "I need you to now." I said, "There's nothing we can do because you've already been put into doing the task." I said, "So I need you to regroup and refocus on the 3 points, give yourself 3 talking points, and make short paragraphs around those 3 talking points. And that is what you focus on." I told her, "for the next 15 minutes. Whatever time you have left, spend that time reviewing what you have written down." I get a call maybe an hour or 2 hours later, and she's happy, she's giddy, and she's like, "Mom, I aced this presentation. I said, as I knew you would. And she told me, thank you for listening to me vent. I said, not a problem. And really, again, we all go through these spirals where we get asked to do a task. And because, again, we are so used to being limited, we are so comfortable with the limits that we set on ourselves, that how dare somebody come and tell us that we need to step outside the limits and kind of stretch ourselves to be a little bit better. So when I look at this question of how is it, or what does it mean to have fear, have so much fear for some people, to the effect to where it could possibly paralyze you because you've been asked to do a task, but you complete that task anyway. What does that mean? And for me, I look at it as you have conquered that fear, right? Because again, we set limits. Okay, this is my limit. I'm not going past this. I'm not, no, you're asking me to do, no, I, and the reason why a lot of individuals, you as myself included, have set limits on certain things is because we want to avoid the discomfort of change. So asking us to step outside of that limit or outside of that box, as some people would say, is how dare you do that? What is wrong with you? This is my box. I didn't invite you in. What are you talking about? That's how majority of us act when we get asked to do something that we're really not used to doing. You're asking me to step outside my box. And that's not something I do often. So, how I have learned how to deal with this type of thing or this type of issue, this type of fear, is I refocus it and turn it into a challenge. Right now, I can honestly say with the boyfriend situation, it was more of a, I had to go deep within and understand that this really isn't what he wants. This is not what he's accustomed to. I knew that. He knew that. But because of how we felt for each other, we felt, okay, maybe we can make this work. But in the end, I came to agree, you know what? This isn't for me because he's not happy, because he knows that this is not who he wants to be. Now, maybe later, it may be something that he's into, but right now, that's just not who he is. And I had to be okay with that. Um, and that whole exercise, I guess in a way you could say I did have to shift and challenge myself to walk through the fear versus backing into it and rejecting it all the way. With Jayana, I helped her switch her thought process to a challenge. And what the challenge does, if you haven't caught on yet, is it completely pushes fear out the door. And when you say, okay, This is a challenge for me. Now what you start to focus on is what are the first few steps I need to do to complete this challenge, right? So now I'm creating steps to really hone in and focus in on the challenge that I have set for myself. Now, what the steps are doing, slowly easing me outside of my box. So we have to learn. That is one of my nuggets of helping me come out of a fear state. Now, of course, it's different for each situation because there's also different types of fear. You have fear that is really danger and threatening. And this is real, true, honest fear. Somebody is running from something, they're trying to get away from somebody, or there's just some type of threat or danger. And it is real, true, and honest to goodness. What do we call it? Just true fear that is valid. There you go. That's the word I'm looking for. It's valid fear. And then we have what I call perceived notion fear, which is basically what I was going through when I had to realize that I was going to have to give this man up. This was my dude. But what I had to come to terms with was the perceived notions that I had built around why it wasn't a good idea for me and him not to break up. My perceived notion was, we've been waiting a whole decade and a half for this. This is not the time to be telling me this right now. Was it logical? Of course not. But at the time, that is what my perceived notion, my thoughts were thinking. That those are the thoughts that were going through. What am I going to do? I had to literally go through the fear. I had to sit myself down and say, girl, what were you doing before he even came back? I was thriving. I was thriving while he was here. But because of the perceived notions, somehow that thriving piece got thrown out the window. And I was like, who am I going to be without him? This is my dude. And it wasn't that I had lost myself in him because, like I said, it was a long distance relationship. So we were still talking, or I was still doing my thing over here. And of course, he was doing his thing a little bit more than what he should have been doing, but he was doing his thing. And I had to come to grips with, these are perceived notions. This is what I perceive. This was my expectation. And that is not something that we should really be doing. So I had to challenge, switch that thought process, come through the fear, and start to look at the big picture of, you know what? I know this relationship is hard on him because this is not who he's ready to be right now. And that's okay. To this day, we are still close friends. But we are not in that relationship stage. Is that feeling still there? Oh, yes. We still hang out. We still laugh. in everything.